Hello and welcome again to Shed Talks, filmed here in my shed. Thanks for joining. In this episode, we're looking at the important topic of mental health and well-being. And I'm delighted to be joined by chartered psychologist, author and former county cricketer Steve Sylvester. Steve works with some of the world's top performing sports people, including world champions, the West Indies cricket team and Sheffield United Football Club during their promotion to the Premiership last year. In this episode, Steve shares insights from over 20 years' experience as a chartered psychologist and covers subjects including dealing with uncertainty, so pertinent for today, and the mental health 5-a-day. Before we hear from Steve, just a quick note to say that Gallagher has developed a range of mental wellbeing solutions that tackle areas including line manager capability and individual resilience. Do contact me via email for more information. So let's now hear from Steve Sylvester on mental health and wellbeing. So, hi Steve, and welcome to the Shed.
Oh, it's great to be here, Francis. Thanks for having me on.
Not at all. Really good to see you again. I know it's been a while since we met in person, but thanks again for giving some time today. I know this topic specifically is one that is going to be really at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. So I only wish we had longer than the time we have, but let's cover what we can in this time. Tell me a bit more about Talking Mental Health. What's that? What's the thinking behind that?
Yeah, so in the new year, I set up a YouTube channel with my son, who's a psychology graduate, and he just felt that there was something. It's his passion and drive to bring alive some of my experiences online, and this is going back last Christmas. So and I just finished a contract. I just finished working with the West Indies cricket team. I'd been on a 2-year contract with them. And so it was a question of bringing myself home and having clients in different sports and in business and basically providing information on my approach so I could extend some of the work that I've been doing via the internet, via YouTube. And obviously Zach, being a younger person and having this whole new digital platform, wanted to push that forward.
Great. So that's taking your experience with professional sports people and putting that into the realm for others to benefit from and engaging your son in that as well. That's really unique. Brilliant. Tell me more, Steve, about your work with professional sports people. You're dealing with individuals that are facing stress. What kind of, without obviously giving anything away on a personal level, but what kind of things are you seeing from sports people and stress and how they're dealing with that?
Well, huge levels of uncertainty, Francis. They're used to playing, so they have a regular pattern of training, then into matches, and then into more training again, and certainty on that. Now they're training without any certainty of when they're going to play next, and that is causing major issues to their self-regard, like when am I going to play again, and how do I keep preparing and peaking and tapering my training for performance. So there are issues that are really impinging on their if you like, their well-being. Right.
And that's so challenges around uncertainty. So that's facing professional sports people. Uncertainty is facing everyone right now. Okay, so there's huge amount of uncertainty in the economy. There's uncertainty for employees. There's uncertainty for those that have been furloughed. There just is uncertainty in the world right now. Yeah. What kind of, as a professional trained psychologist and occupational psychologist as you are, what kind of techniques, I know we don't have a huge amount of time, but what kind of techniques to deal with uncertainty would you recommend that people could adopt themselves?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that my research over the last 20 years with world champions found that they became the best in the world when they gave up self-interest and thought more about how can I become the best in the world at doing what I do? How can this help others and benefit others? And in the same token, that kind of selfless approach we're seeing with the NHS and the care workers giving to others, there's something very good to our soul and our spirit when we actually help people. And when it comes to our mental health, by helping, we push people in the right direction and they feel so much more centered once they know they're giving to other people. So I found that research sort of across 20 years of work, and now I'm applying it with all my work now, whether you're an executive facing the uncertainty of work or whether you're a sportsman at the top level facing that uncertainty. And what's come of it is that it's basically your ability to tolerate ambiguity. So your mental flexibility. So part of the work that I do in terms of helping people is taking them through a process of awareness, number one. Number two, acceptance of what you become aware to. And then number three, the self-correction. So what do I do to self-correct my situation when I'm trying to understand my intolerance to all the problems and the uncertainty and the ambiguity that there is now?
That's interesting. And when we were talking earlier on as well, I mean, you were saying about the power of conversation.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the importance of conversation. And could you unpack that a bit as well? Because I think that's something we could all benefit from.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we came up with the Talking Mental Health YouTube channel, because I think there's an underappreciation, Francis, of talking. It's potent to talk, and we know this intuitively, and obviously we're all humans and we understand our frailties and insecurities, and that talking can help. But what we don't understand as much is how we go about talking. And there needs to be a greater science in the way we go about talking, because if we don't have that, we slip into poor ways of thinking that lead to poor action and poor behavior. So there needs to be a greater light shone on the ability to hold a conversation that's caring, that wins the hearts and the minds of staff and allows them the freedom to express who they are.
Well, so taking that, and that's really interesting about how we speak. So it's not just talking, it's what we say and how we say it. Applying that to leaders, managers, team leaders, people running Zoom calls, Teams calls, etc., Skypes with their teams, on a daily basis. And, what kind of techniques and what advice would you give leaders who are managing people about how they talk to their teams?
Well, the first thing I do is hear their narrative. And then I put it in the realms of a world champion. And is their narrative, how far is it away from or similar to the world champions that I've worked with, to give me an understanding of what their narrative is saying? And what that gives me is an insight into some below the surface kind of thinking. How much of what they're saying is selfish and it's for self-interest, and how much of it is for the good of others, the benefit of others. And I kind of assess people accordingly across that spectrum. So selfishness at one end and selflessness at the other. And we know that when you're being selfless, you're free. And we know that when you're being selfish, you're not as free. There are things that you're holding on to that probably don't make you think and feel in the right way. They have to process their own narrative. What is their story, and how much of that story is wrapped up in a world of just fighting survival and self-interest, and how much of it is I'm here to do something purposeful for my organization that's going to be last a legacy beyond me. It's going to go further. Part of the assessment is to look at the three characteristics of successful people, and there are only three factors.
Right, I'm going to cut the video there and we'll stop. I'm joking.
So I actually thought you were being serious.
No. What are those three?
So how driven you are is number one.
Right.
So how prepared are you to do all you can for the organization you work for? Right. Number one. Number two, how bright are you, dare I say it? And what I mean by that is, are you bright enough to make good decisions in the role that you're playing within your organization? And then the third one is, how interpersonal are you? So how can you go about influencing and communicating people around you to do the job that they need to do? So that's your leadership bit. That's your transformational ability to get people, to draw people through influence and persuasion to do what you know they need to do.
So that's really interesting, Steve. So we're short for time.
Yeah.
You're sat, giving some advice to leaders, team leaders, HR leaders in an organisation. What are the top tips you would give them? And they're responsible for the well-being of their people, and especially the mental well-being of their people, and helping and supporting their staff. What advice would you give leaders?
I think the first thing is to recognise the transition to home working or working remotely and the impact that's having, the change of our regular routine to a new home-based working routine. And I think HR directors and obviously senior management teams in organizations have to really take some time to appreciate the impact on staff from the remote working concept. And it's new to us because we've not worked like this ever before. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say is that in my work, I try and get all levels, whether you're at senior management level, whether you're mid-tier line managers, or whether you're direct subordinates to those line managers, get them thinking about what I call the 5 a day. And the 5 a day are listen, smile, have fun, put the effort in, and give to others. So it's about, and those 5 a day help with mental well-being, because they've come from my 20 years of research working with the top athletes, and they really do move them forward in terms of their thinking, their action, and how they feel. And I've also worked in schools, so there is another side to it, that the 5 a day is so simple that schools and children like it. So it works very, very, very useful for them. So I am going to put them on the YouTube channel with Zach, where we're going to talk through, what it actually means to do the 5 a day. Because we know the 5 a day for physical health, but what's the 5 a day for mental health?
Interesting, fascinating. Yeah, and I suppose with all of those things, it's getting into the habit and the discipline of doing those. So at first it might seem, listen or have fun, that might feel a bit like, but actually if you get into the habit of that, like with vegetable and fruit,
I believe in it so much that all the kids do the 5 a day. It's something that I believe in. Now, I'm not saying it's everything, because I'm not trying to kind of say, oh, look, how clever I am or whatever. I'm just saying that I've found them to be helpful with the best in the world. So why can't they be helpful for everybody?
Wow. Okay, that's very helpful, Steve. Just to finish, because time is tight, but thinking specifically around, you've worked across multiple sports, you've worked across multiple disciplines, and you've worked with many, world champions and professional sports people. Just one final question: from all of that learning and from all of that interaction you've had with those people, what's the kind of the main leave behind that you would say will help with mental well-being across all of that? And that's a big question, but what's the one thing that if you had one thing to say that's going to help improve your mental well-being, above all else, what would it be?
I'd have to say, above anything else, it's the deliciousness of talking.
Right.
Talking is an essential, almost, it sounds such an obvious thing, but I mean really talking. That means really processing fear in your life, when you're sad, processing times when you're mad, processing time when you feel happy, what's going on in your life, and take time to stop and look at what you say and how you converse with other people, especially when you're now working remotely. How does it impact another human being? And particularly leaders have to realize there's an importance of leadership by distance versus leadership nearby.
Yeah, that's a really good way to end, Steve. I've enjoyed this talk. It's been really helpful. And looking forward to continuing to talk and discuss these topics. This is one of those areas that will just carry on as a need for organisations. So hope to speak again soon, Steve. Thanks very much for your time, and we'll speak again. Cheers.
Thank you, Pastor. I've enjoyed it.